Hi there, so this is the weekend review going over the performances that caught my eye over the weekend that's just gone. So we'll start off with the meeting at York on Saturday. Bumper crowd there for that meeting there with Becky Hill playing afterwards. I was there as well. Didn't do that well on the punting point of view. Didn't do terribly, but a couple of performances still were catching my eye. And in the 155, this race was won by Curragh. I actually backed Frankie's Dream in this race at 8-1. And the horse went off a very short price in the end at 5-2. Did think Clifford Lee had the horse a bit too far back, but as I said when I was doing my tipping page, this horse can be keen, and I think that he was wanting to get a bit of cover. But when he bought the horse out, he was too far back, and Curragh, the winner, and indeed Undersight, were too far ahead of him, and therefore he was always going to be struggling to rein those two in. Undersight, I thought, ran really well, though, again from a bad draw. In stall 15, I thought he ran really well. He'd ran well the time before at York over 7 furlongs behind a well-handicapped horse in Extremely Zane. So I think Undersight's certainly worth keeping an eye on in the 7 furlong mile handicaps there in due course. But Frankie's Dream just needs to learn to settle a little bit, and I think he'll be still worth following as well, given the fact he was a bit too far back on a fast day at York there, where it was hard to pick horses up from the back. And that was also the case in the 225 there, which was won by Nana's Shadow. The winner of this race showed a bit more versatility than what he has done. He's been a horse that's been going out and leading. I think Oisin Murphy rode with his head here, and he just sat off the pace. It was a guaranteed pace with Scrondinger's Cat in the race. He was always going to go out there and make the running. And he did do that, and he finished second, only just by Nana's Shadow, who, like I said, was just ridden that little bit more patiently. And that, I think, was the difference there between winning and losing, because Oisin Murphy was just able to produce him and outdo Scrondinger's Cat, who had been up there from the get-go. A horse that went off favourite in this race was Fortification. He ran well from a bad draw at York last time in a big sprint handicap, but he was always behind. He was slowly away, and he never really got into the race. Ben Robinson was looking down at one stage, but I think Fortification, he's just one of these horses that could be, when he runs well and gets a good pace to aim at, he can look good, but the run style he has for York is a little bit concerning. I know he's won at the track this year, but I just think when they go hard, especially on the quick ground, I think it doesn't play to his strengths personally. But I learnt that the hard way, because I did back Fortification, and he was drawn in stall 11 as well. Which is not an ideal draw. Again, the draws for that race were 5, 1 and 7, and the 4-4 so Go Vince Go ran well, considering he was drawn in stall 13. So a good performance there from Go Vince Go in the 225. Again, that one might be worth looking at, potentially on softer ground as well. For 258, there was the feature race on the card at York. This was won by Curragh. Who knew that this horse could win a group race after the Sussex Stakes, where he'd been very disappointing. But he did the job well. Good front-running ride from Sylvester de Souza. I have to say, I thought Never So Brave. I don't think he's quite the horse as what he was last year when he won the new Group 1, the City of York, last year. And I just think when he had the chance to go past Curragh, he just turned his head to the left-hand side. He was a little bit ungamely. I thought he just curled up a little bit. I thought he had every chance. He was well backed, going off the 6-4 favourite after drifting in the morning. Sabre Strike was his market rival. Went off 13-8. He was a little bit laboured in the early stages, and I think it was a slight surprise that William Haggis had bought him out, considering so quickly after running in the Jersey last week, where he also went off a short price favourite that day when everyone thought he was a certainty. But he was a bit disappointing again there. He might need another furlong potentially to be seen at his best, but he's becoming a bit expensive to follow now on his last 2 runs, Sabre Strike. So I'd be giving him a pass potentially, but he needs to be stepped up to a mile. But if he goes off a short price again, I wouldn't be touching him with a barge pole really there in the 258. I think he's becoming an expensive horse to follow at the present time. The 338 was the Albastieki World Dubai Handicap. Who's Loop, I thought, was given a good ride in this by Oisin Murphy. Got a soft lead, set his own fractions out in front. I was actually against Who's Loop in this race. I actually laid the horse on Betfair. I thought he was too short given the ground conditions. And being by Luke de Vega, I thought, even though he's won on Good to Firm before, I thought that was a weak race he won at Beverley last time. So I thought he was a horse to take on, actually. But when Oisin was out in front, like I said, setting his own fractions, I thought, well, I'm going to be losing this one. But thankfully, my Ballyquin got up to win by half a length. I thought this is a good bit of training as well by David O'Mara. The horse has been stepped up in trip now to a mile 6 furlongs, and I think that's in keeping with his pedigree. The dam side is chock full of stamina-laden horses. He's actually got an Ascot Gold Cup winner there in his pedigree. He ran well over a mile and a half at Doncaster last time in a small field, which probably didn't suit him. He then ran over a mile 3 before that when he won at Hamilton. And I just think he's getting steadily more progressive as time goes on. And I think, again, a race like the Melrose down the line could be on the agenda for him. But I do think he'll be better actually over further, potentially even 2 miles. He's in a race at Sandown next week on Friday, and indeed at Thirsk on the Wednesday, but I'd much prefer him going to the race at Sandown on the Friday over a mile 6. I think that's going to become his minimum trip now. But he did really well, and I was impressed with David O'Mara as a trainer. Got an excellent record at York, and I think he's starting to realise the improvement this horse is bringing out, being stepped up in trips. So good performance there from My Ballyquin, and thankfully he won because I did back the favourite to lose on Betfair there in Who's Loopy. On the card. Hello Space Boy also did a good time in the 4:15 as well. He was impressive, a really well backed favourite as well. Another winner for Oisin Murphy on the day here with 2 winners. It's par for the course for him these days, but he did really well there. David O'Mara though did have the winner My Ballyquin as I mentioned, but he wasn't there at York. He was at the Curragh on Saturday to see Estrange, this really lovable grey mare, win the Pretty Polly. Just a note in this race, of course, we had Thundering On, who, of course, was very impressive when winning the Oaks last time. I think that afterwards it was reported that she was coughing post-race, so you'd have to put a line through this. She travelled well, but she just never picked up when asked, and that probably explains why she didn't really pick up and was a disappointing 4th in the end. But take nothing away from Estrange, who was well backed before the off, was 9-4, then was backed into 13-8. And she did it very impressively, beating the Paddy Toomey trained One Look. Red Letter ran okay in 3rd. I've always really liked this horse, Estrange. I actually remember seeing David O'Mara in a bar in York and asking for a horse to follow. This was a couple of years ago now. And he said, I've got a horse for Chieveley Park called Estrange, and she's the most expensive horse I've ever had in the stable. And she duly bolted up on debut at Goodwood that weekend. By 12 lengths with Danny Tudhope looking round for dangers, and therefore I followed her ever since, and she's come all the way, winning a Group 1 on good to firm ground as well, which probably isn't our ideal conditions. I think on good to soft or even softer ground you'd see an even better mare, which is quite scary. I do think that a mile and a quarter is her best trip though. I think a mile and a half does stretch her, and that's why I'd be a little bit lukewarm on the Arc de Triomphe, but if she gets soft ground she would have a chance. There. Of course, she didn't run there last year because of the draw when that came out. She was drawn in the car park. But hopefully, a mile and a quarter on good to soft or even softer, I think will be ideal for her. But hey, she's won on the Group 1 on good to firm ground as well there on the Saturday. So really, congratulations there to David O'Mara winning that race there on Saturday. Also want to point as well to Sun Goddess, who won the early stakes there, the Group 2 there for the fillies. Obviously, this horse was a short price favourite for the Albany last week at Royal Ascot. Did that, ran well there, but finishing 2nd, but got beaten there by the George Bowie horse, Libertango, who I thought was very impressive on the day. I thought this was a good performance, though, like I said, bounced back, won by 3/4 of a length. The horse I'd be taking out of this, though, would be number 5, Green Empress, who finished 2nd for Joseph O'Brien. In keeping, with a pedigree out of Sea Empress, a Choi family, who've mainly had their horses with William Haggis. This horse will be better surely stepped up to a mile later in the season. And I think over 7 furlongs next time will certainly be of interest there. And stayed on really well, like I said, as keeping with his pedigree. Joseph O'Brien had the 3rd horse as well, Babine, but that horse has got more of a sprinting pedigree, made the running, and I was always going to be susceptible to a horse staying on like Green Empress. But Sun Goddess did it well, but I think, like I said, Green Empress, a horse to take out there moving forward from the 3:20 there on Saturday. We also, of course, had the Curragh as well for Irish Derby Day yesterday. And the winner early on in the card was a horse called Purview there, who took out the Free International Stakes. I'm very impressed by this horse previously when winning over a mile and a half. The horse had to step down to a mile and a quarter here, but did it in very good style under Colin Keane, who kept it simple. Had the horse in a prominent position. If anything was going to do this horse for a turn of foot, then good luck to him. And if anything horse was going to do them for stamina, then it was always going to be an ass to beat Purview, who did it in good style. there. I think it's going to be likely now that the Irish Champion Stakes is going to be on this horse's agenda before heading out to America for the Breeders' Cup Turf, which Dermot Weld and Colin Keane have won before with Tanawa. But a very nice performance there from Purview, backing up what the clock said when winning last time out in listed company and taking a Group 3 en route before hopefully going up into the highest level later on in the season. And really nice to see Dermot Weld having a nice horse on his hands there for Juddmonte in Purview. Then, of course, we have the Irish Derby, which was taken by Aidan O'Brien with Benevento Cellini. I was very impressed by this horse early on in the season. I always had him down as Aidan O'Brien's Derby horse when winning on Irish Champions Day last year. But this was a good performance. It just had to be put up there in the early stages, didn't he, Benevento Cellini? He was a little bit slowly away. And at one point, he was a little bit detached from the field, but he just quietly and steadily got into a good position, and it was a bit inevitable really up the home straight that he was going to win. I think Rahib was a little bit disappointing. He obviously hasn't had a run since Sandown. He finished fourth. It wasn't a terrible run, but you'd have expected a little bit better. But I think he'll be better later on in the season, and hopefully stays in training as well next year for Owen Burrows. But a good performance of Benevento Cellini, beating the Derby winner, of course, in Christmas Day, who ran well considering it probably wasn't his ideal ground conditions there, back on a sounder surface there when finishing second. Pierre Bernard also ran well. It was probably his best run of the season, finishing 2 lengths behind there in third, behind the winner Benevento Cellini. It'd be interesting to see where he goes now. It well could be the King George next, with a possible tilt at the Arc de Triomphe. I would say it wasn't the best Irish Derby I've ever seen though, and I wouldn't be rushing to take any anti-post prices about him for those two contests there at the moment, especially if the Arc de Triomphe, given it could come up soft, which wouldn't be the conditions he would be favouring there in early October. But there you go, that is the performances that caught my eye over the weekend. I think my Ballyquin would certainly be the one that I'd be most looking forward to out from the handicaps there moving forward. I think the horse has now found his niche, stepped up in trip, and hopefully he can take more handicaps throughout the summer there for David O'Mara. But thanks very much for listening. If you like this video, please like it or indeed subscribe to the channel. And if you also want to get any of my tips, please head over to my Patreon page, which I'll also leave a link to in the comments. So thanks very much, and hopefully you have a great week.